Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Can You Hack It? I'm Ben, also known as Iceman, and this week we're taking a look at another box from Hackthebox.eu. This time we're taking it back to the future with FluxCapacitor. And so as you can see here, system's another Linux box. It's got a difficulty rating for the user exploit that's fairly high, hard to too hard, some people extremely hard to brain fuck. So this isn't one of the simpler ones, but it's also not the hardest thing in the world. And then as you can see, the root own difficulty is actually quite a bit easier on this box. And so let's go ahead and get started. We've already got our connection to the network, so let's go ahead and just pop open a new terminal here, tmux it up, and we will create another directory like always for our box. So we'll make dir FluxCapacitor. Let's make a directory in here for our Nmap scans as well, and then let's get that first Nmap scan fired up. So as usual, Nmap-v T5 for a aggressive scan, SC for run scripts, and SV for enumerate versions, OA to output all formats to Nmap quick. 10, 69, and apparently I can't type today. Let's fix that. Output. I really can't type today. I actually do that so other people don't feel as bad when they mistype. But seriously, no, I just mistype all the time. Looks like we've got port 80 open. I don't see anything else showing up here yet, so let's go ahead and, while that's still running, let's pop open to port 80 and see what we got here. So we have node 1 alive, FluxCapacitor, and component FluxCapacitor, yada yada, roads, where we're going. We don't need roads. Let's view the page source on this bad boy while we're waiting. Actually, we're down here, so it looks like all we found was that port 80. See the server responding as super WAF, so it's likely we have some sort of web application firewall in front of this web server. And if you notice here, we've got a comment for please add timestamp with something like in a script tag, an AJAX request to a URL @/sync. So let's go ahead and take a journey on over to /sync. See what we see here. We see forbidden. I assume we don't see anything new here. So open resty. So something's not allowing us to see this. Could be an IP restriction. It could also be an authentication issue, although usually we'd see some sort of authentication prompt. Let's get Durbuster running on this for a second while we're waiting. Just to see if we see anything else in here also. Okay, and so another thing could be user agent. In any case, let's go ahead and set this up for Burp, which I've already got started here, and let's make another request to it. So here's our request. Minimize this so it's out of our way. So standard get request to /sync. Let's try first off. Sometimes they don't like certain user agents, so we'll just call this user AG. Okay, so it's choking on that /sync. That's fine. Let's close this out for now. So let's go ahead and forward that with our user agent changed, and it looks like we get a timestamp back now. Nothing too special about this. We could assume that this is probably made by a something like this. Date. Let's see what it looks like. We've got the year, month, day, capital T, and then the time. So it's probably something along the lines of year, month, day, T, hour, minute, second. Something like that. And it looks like our time is, we're in a different time zone than the server, or it's using GMT or something. Anyway, it looks like it's about the same, so that's fine. If we make multiple calls to this, to go back through here, let's just work in here instead, send this to repeater. So if we make multiple requests to this, time is incrementing, so I think it is something where it's probably executing a command on the system. So we can see if there's anything interesting we can do with this. Let's see, first things first, let's see if we can fuzz for any sort of parameters on this. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And to do that, we'll use wfuzz. And we'll use, let's see, verbose. Let's hide output that, well, first let's just see. Yeah, let's do that. Let's hide output that is 19 characters long, because we don't care if we get a page back with this timestamp. And then color output, use a word list, we'll use share word lists. We'll use that same dirbuster word list to start out with. Medium. Remember, we have to give it a fake user agent. G. Which that, by the way, is just some random thing you could have thrown. Yeah, let's throw fake in there if we wanted it. Shouldn't matter as long as it doesn't match whatever the server's trying to match for its WAF rules. And so to fuzz for parameters, what you want to do is you want to take the request that works, put a question mark, which will be our operator to enter a parameter. Fuzz is what wfuzz is going to replace with words from its word list. And then for now, let's see, I usually like to just do something kind of generic. We'll just do 3 single quotes and see if that works. Sometimes you have to play around with that a little bit, because if we find a legitimate parameter, this is what's going to be passed to it. And my assumption here, based on the fact that we see this date timestamp, is that whatever this page is doing, it's passing things to some sort of command interpreter. And so hopefully it will choke on the quotes and give us some sort of output that lets us know it's alive. And I screwed something up along the way. Let's see. Have our word list. Capital H allows us to put in our headers. Should be good, I believe. Let's try this. See if it's just choking on the extra quotes here. I don't think it's choking on this. I did mistype there. Oh, I see what it is. So this is another gotcha. The flags here for hiding and showing, they require a double dash. Okay, and so for some reason wfuzz has a tendency to choke on anything that starts with the comment line. It just prints it out anyway. Even though it wasn't supposed to, since we're telling it to hide stuff with 19 characters. So I don't know if that's an intended design thing or unintentional, but just be aware of it. Those payloads probably aren't going to work to do anything other than get us our normal timestamp. And as always, there's no assurance that, that there is a parameter here, but it's this or searching for more folders, which we should actually be doing at the same time. I'll switch over here and start a derby. It's doing that. Let's switch back here and see if we have anything interesting. So we have opt, which returned just a single character. So let's mess with our request here a little bit. Opt equals. That looks like that returns, yeah, just a blank. So let's see if we can do anything interesting with this now. If we have just a space, we get a bash-c option requires an argument. So it looks like something's being passed to bash, to an ls. It looks like that's forbidden. Again, that's probably our WAF rules. Sometimes you can get around to those by just simply quoting out part of it. That just gives us the timestamp, so presumably that failed to go through. Let's take a look back here. Still don't see anything new. Dirbuster's still generating the word list. We may have actually said something wrong there. Empty quotes. There's nothing. So the fact that putting a space in here gives us this bash error makes me believe that we likely have something going on like this, like let's say date equals date plus, so we have our format string again. And then they're sending that to bash c. Probably doing something like that, although I actually screwed that up a little bit. Just notice the format string wasn't actually taken. And so my guess is when we insert like our option maybe put in here or something, so we may see, oh I bet, yeah, sorry, using single quotes. And so by having our quotes with a space, we probably ended up with something like that, because originally they had that, and let's say options put in here maybe, in which case we get this, although that gives a bash command not found instead. Anyway, so let's see what else we can do. Let's leave our space in there, since it seems to give us something different. Let's try an ls from here. Put that in again. Quote it out. And so it looks like we got an ls result back. So it looks like we're in the root of the system, based on the directories we're seeing here. Another possible way to do this is using a technique called globbing. Bin L question. Actually, ls is kind of a pain to use with globbing because it's going to call link instead. So let's skip that so I don't end up doing something weird. And instead, let's see what other commands we can find that work. So we could either manually go through here trying to check for directories by doing stuff like ls home. So we've got 2 accounts in there. Another thing we can do, I'll actually pull it up here, this code I haven't published yet, but I'll stick it on GitHub. Hopefully before I post this video. I'm kind of working on a tool that's just a Go version of wfuzz. The only point was really just write some code, and I came across an issue when I was doing this box with wfuzz, which possibly I just don't know how to use it properly, but basically I wanted to fuzz the options here now with Linux commands to see which Linux commands were filtered and which commands weren't filtered. And the problem that I came across with wfuzz was I couldn't get my single quotes in here. It always URL escaped them. And so because of that, I couldn't get things to operate properly. So anyway, I ended up working on this tool just for fun. This won't URL escape the quotes. I've actually basically already set up my debugging environment, which we'll run it out of, to run 10 threads, just so it makes it a little quicker. Use a word list. And the word list we're using is one of the FuzzDB ones, which is a publicly available collection of word lists. In their attack OS CMD execution, they have one called commands-Linux. And so basically I'm going to use that, pass it to this to option where fuzz is. So same basic concept as wfuzz. Difference being this tool is not at all sophisticated yet. We don't have any way to filter the output like we did in wfuzz. Again, I plan on adding that later if I keep working on this just for fun, but as of right now it's pretty stupid. And so we'll just go ahead and hit OK, and we'll use this as is. And so what it's going to do now is you see it starts making requests to that URL, trying to pass in different commands. No sort of escaping or globbing or string concatenation, nothing other than just passing them through. And so it made 572 requests, took 13.5 seconds. Most of them, let's copy and paste this. This is why it would be nice to have the filtering that we have in wfuzz. But right now it's just being kind of lazy. Copy it. Let's put it into Sublime Text. We can work with it in here. And so basically, we see a lot of these have 39 character, 174, but those are 403s, which are the WAF blocking us. So we have some that come through, but when they do, they're 39 character. I actually think, let's try this one. I think that -c requires an argument, so it doesn't like this. So let's clean this up a bit really quickly with Sublime Text. So we just do a find. Let's find 403s. So now we have all the 403s selected. We'll hit home to go to the beginning, shift end to select everything, and then clear this out. So now we have no more 403s left. I'm not sure why these ones at the top kind of screwed up, but that's fine. Manually clean it up. Okay, and then the rest of these that are 39 characters we also don't want, so let's do, I think we're probably safe there. Oh, we're going to catch line 39. There we go, that's enough that it looks like we're not. Oh, we're catching line 139 still. Okay, that looks good. Oops. Sorry, I hit the wrong key combination. Again, home, shift, end, clear all those out. And so it looks like this is the list we have of commands that seem to work without error. There's not a whole lot of usable stuff here, but there's enough to get some stuff done. So like who am I works, W appears to work. The W should show us who's logged on. It's just, I think it's an alias for who. So nobody's logged on to this system right now. Who am I? I'm nobody. Which other ones do we have in here? We've got some that calculates a checksum, probably not super useful. We've got ID, which again shows us the same thing as who am I. We've got ARP, so we could look at the ARP table. We've got apt. Let's see, apt we could probably play with a little bit just to see what version of Linux this is. We've got an apt list, GCC. GCC may be on the box. Again, you can just try different stuff. Use string concatenation to get around the WAF. So it looks like it's artful, so it's like a really new version of Ubuntu. I think that's 1710. DU, OD, DF. So DU and OD may be interesting to use. DU we could actually use, even though we already know LS works, we could also use DU in a similar way. So if we did DU-A, since we're in the root, that's actually going to do DU across everything. So let's do a max depth equals 1, and this should basically list all the directories and files that are in the root. And it does. And so we could use this to start poking around a little bit more. We could do like a /home. So it looks like we've got the middle FluxCapacitor, which is what we already saw. Since we're in home now, we can probably remove this safely and not get flooded with responses. And so now we can see that we've got some interesting stuff here. I'm going to actually go ahead and copy this, paste it into here. And so we can see there's actually two user text files. We can see if we can grab them. We might be able to use the cat command, probably not. Cat /home, then middle. User.text. Forbidden. Probably doesn't like us using the cat command. I can try and string concat it out. That still fails. Let's see if it's because of user.text. Okay, and so we are able to get it here, although this apparently isn't the flag on this one. I'll show you real quick, since this only takes a second. There's another way we could have done this. Since we have the OD command, which, if we look at the man page here, it dumps files in octal and other formats. And so what we can do is do an, which I believe is, let me look real quick since we have this up. So capital A, 0 address radix, and N means none. Yeah, and so we'll use that, and we'll use dash lowercase c, which will print, select printable characters, and then backslash escapes. And so you can see here that also worked for reading it. There's extra spaces here for the way it was formatting it. We could easily pull those out if we cared. In this case, since we can get cat to work, there's no need to play games with OD. So we just do cat. And then the other one was FluxCapacitor inc. We'll leave user.text quoted out since it's apparently filtering that. It's still not allowing us, so it's possible that we have an issue in FluxCapacitor inc since that's the only field that changed. One thing to look for here is commands that may be blocked, that may coincidentally be inside of this text, because if it's using some sort of a filter in the WAF, a regex or something, it may match in the middle of words. The only thing that sticks out to me is right here at the end we have NC, which could be netcat, and it may be blocking that, so we just quote out this, oops. And what we're doing here with these quotes, it's string concatenation, and so in bash, these quotes will just be removed, and it'll all be put back the same way as it was before. And so it's essentially ignored. But the WAF may not be configured in such a way that it removes them. At high enough paranoia levels, most of them will go ahead and do the same thing as bash would do and strip all that stuff out and then do its comparisons. But as you can see here, it wasn't smart enough to in this case, and so we're able to get the user.txt flag. And so first one's down. As usual, I will just copy and paste this. By the way, I think in future videos I'm going to stop showing those just so that if somebody else wants to do this box, even though it's retired, they can't just simply take my flags and put them in, even though to me I don't see why anybody would do that. It's a huge waste of their own time. But you never know. And so now that we've got that, let's see if we can get the root one. Let's go back to doing an ls on, I believe it was the middle's account, but let's check this one real quick. So this one just has user.txt. I think we can do an LA here. Yeah. Okay, so it just has user.txt, so nothing interesting in there. But let's look at our other one, the middle. Okay, and so he's got more interesting stuff. He's got something called checksync, and he's got something called monet. The rest of this stuff is pretty default to see in there. So let's cat. Guessing checksync is how we're getting our time. Doesn't like that. It could be because of the word sync. It could be because of the NC in here. If we quote this N, we break both of those. So interesting. And so we don't actually. Oh, well, that's because. There we go. Okay, so this is the contents of our checksync, which is doing a date. And then that same format string that I was assuming earlier. And then the other thing we saw in here was monet. So dot monet, which was a hidden file. That's what the dot in the front means. And so here we have an if the first, well, I'll copy this and paste it and then we'll cover what it does. Okay, and so what this is doing is it's, after the dot monet, it's looking at the first argument. So argument 0, $0 would have been monet, or the script name. And it's looking to see if it's command. if it is command, then it's going to try and execute it. And this is interesting. It's going to try to first assign a variable called command, which is going to be echoing without the new line this second argument passed to the script, and it's going to pipe that to base64-d. And so what that's going to do is do a decryption on a base64 encoded string, and then finally it's going to do a --c with command. So it looks like this may be an interesting way to sneak in all kinds of command executions that the WAF shouldn't be able to detect because they'll be base64 encoded. And so what we can do then is let's take a look and see, start building a way for us to actually send those commands through. Just to do a quick test. So let's do an ls-la home the middle, and then let's pipe that to base64. Let's echo-n. So what this is going to do is echo that command to base64, which will encode it. So here's our base64 encoded version of that. We'll copy that. We will do this. It wanted CMD, and I think it wanted it in lowercase. I believe it is case sensitive, yeah. CMD. And then our base64 encoded command. And so it looks like that works. Trying to execute base64. And here's our contents that we already know exist in the monet directory. So let's use this to poke around a little bit. Well, first, let's just put this off in this window. As long as we're not being blocked by the WAF, there's probably no reason to go to the extent of using that, although it's good in case we get into a situation where the WAF is starting to get in the way a lot more. So let's look around and see if we can find how this web application works. I'm assuming because it's OpenResty that, well, actually let's do this. Echo-n find -name Resty should be good enough. I suppose we can always see. Let's try it up here first, just because again, no need to go to the hard thing if the easy one works. Name Resty. Okay, forbidden. Maybe it's because of our find command. Still forbidden. I doubt it's because of name. Resty. Oops. Well, for now, let's just even try something simpler. It's probably because of these asterisks, so it's probably not allowing that. We could try OpenResty. Well, actually, let's do this. OpenResty is usually an Nginx. See if we can find the Nginx config. So we get our bash C argument requires, okay. Okay, so that's not really working. Let's try it down here instead. Comp base64. So we'll take the base64 encoded version of that. Put it right here. forbidden. Take a quick look up here, see if we see something that it may not be liking. Whether I see anything in particular. Okay, actually I think I do see it right there. It probably is VI, because it's thinking the editor VI. So it looks like it failed to execute, or it failed to find a result. Which is fine, we can try this instead. And try doing a ls LA and go for where it normally is installed, which is user local, OpenResty, Nginx. I'm sure it doesn't like all kinds of things about this. Start slower, we'll start at user local. So that works. We do have an OpenResty folder, so Resty. And that's forbidden. Okay. Is the word open? Yeah. Okay, and then we do have a Nginx folder in there. And let's see. And we've got a comp directory, so let's take a look in there and see. What we're looking for here is hopefully we can find, there it is, the Nginx config, and see if we can see how this firewall is configured. Probably help us work around it a little bit faster. Technically, we could also just be trying to go for the root flag right now, but usually find this a little bit faster. Okay, so now if we switch this over to a cat command. There's our Nginx config. In here. So we'll try and go through this fairly quickly since I don't want to spend a ton of time on it. It's easy to read up on how these WAFs work. In fact, the creator of this, the middle, he's got a couple of great articles online already on bypassing a lot of this stuff, so it's worth a read. He covers globbing, he covers some string concatenation techniques. So it looks like here's our mod sec rules. And so yeah, it doesn't allow user agents with Mozilla or Opera in it. It doesn't allow this set of characters. A lot of them are escaped, so it's like semicolon, parentheses, pipe, backtick, the greater than less than, ampersand, $, or the asterisk. Same thing with user text and root text, it's not allowing. So anyway, you can cover all those yourself. It also looks like it's reading from a file, and this is probably our list of words for opt that aren't allowed. And then it looks like here is where it's actually doing its opt. It's taking that option in, so command, yeah, it's creating a environmental variable. It's calling checksync. It's this opt should, I think, get replaced. Yeah, I'm not super good with a lot of this OUA stuff, but I believe this is a variable called opt, and then that's sent to bash C, and they're tying standard error to standard input. And in this OUA block, you can see that opt is set to date unless there's an argument called opt, in which case it's being set to whatever the argument, which is what we're passing through is. So that is how that works. What was this file? Let's take a look at Unix command.txt. It looks like it's in the same directory we're already in. So let's just cat it, Unix command.txt. Okay, and so now we've got a convenient little list of, a very long list of commands that aren't allowed, or the WAF will block them. And what we're going to do here, I'm going to show you the little thing where we'll copy this, and we'll use a tool that I created for this, which again, publicly available. You could do all this by hand, by the way. You could just avoid those commands, or quote them out, or use globbing techniques to avoid them. As usual, I like to make things a little more automated just because I never know how long things are going to take. And so unless I want to just do a quick little test, I'll usually find a way to make it faster. Blocked commands.txt. So this is it here, bash 64 coder. We'll look at it in raw. And so this is pretty simple. Set this to Python so we get some highlighting. Basically, it just creates a command prompt that loops until you type in exit. Takes your command, passes it to a base 64 encoder, and then what it does is it checks against a word list, blocked commands.txt, which you would edit up here if it was something else. And if it finds those blocked commands inside of the encoded string, it will quote them out. And so that's what it's doing here, is it's quoting them out, and it'll continue to do that until there's none left in there. Once it's finally done, it'll output the base 64 encoding that will pass to that monet command. So I'll go ahead and save this in there also. We'll call it bash 64 coder. And so I think it should be in here now. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong directory. This is password. 64 coder. So it loaded the word list. If it didn't, it would have given us an error here, which I guess I didn't cover that part, but that's okay. So now if we did something like ls, that gives us our output. Let's try doing something stupid that I'm pretty sure won't work, which actually probably should have just tried through the web page, but this is a command cat root.txt. If you really wanted to take that further, you probably could have made it so that it makes the requests for us also, but in this case, I figured it was still easy enough. It's still easy enough to do it this way. Oh, I accidentally hit Control-C, so I cancel out of it. That is fine. Okay, so nothing came back. That's not a big surprise. So let's try seeing if we can sudo. So sudo -l. One of these days I'll learn not to hit Control-C in there. That actually doesn't appear to have worked either. Let's try this just in case. Sudo -l. And let's tie the standard error back to standard input, because I believe it outputs on standard error, and if this isn't being tied back, we wouldn't see it. The same thing, we're still not getting anything back. Oh, you know what it is. It's knowing your syntax. So, trying to execute, that still failed. Let's go back to this one where we weren't tying it. There we go. Okay, and so we can see here that we can actually run this script without a password. And so I believe what we can do then is, let's get the base64 output of cat enumerate.txt. And then let's do a sudo home the middle cmd that our base64 encoded command. I believe this should work. So what this would be doing is it would decode this, which would execute the sudo command on that same script to decode that next payload, which should also execute. I don't know that I'd call it going back to the future, but maybe that's where the name came from, since it is kind of nested. I erased the wrong part. And so we see trying to execute twice, our original one, our inner one, and then finally the root text. And so that's it. You can stop watching at this point if you'd like. I'll actually show real quick a second way to do this, since I noticed on the forums a lot of people didn't know that this could be done without globbing or without getting an interactive shell. And so just for the sake of showing how to get the shell also, this obviously showed how you could do it without globbing and without an interactive shell, just using string concatenation. And real quick, if you're interested, you can continue watching and I'll show you how to get an interactive shell that we can make a full shell just for the sake of showing it. Basically what we're going to want to do is pop open this again and make a bash, interactive bash, and we're going to pipe that to dev tcp, whatever your IP address is. Actually, let me check mine before I type this in because I'm not positive that this is in mine. Big 10.0. Okay. 10.15. So what we're doing here is that TCP / we're using the dev file system. So we'll do TCP followed by our IP address, followed by the port number we want. And then we'll tie standard input to standard output. And so this generates our payload. And you notice in this one, a lot of the previous ones, I don't think we actually had to string concatenate them anywhere. But this one, it automatically string concatenated for us in a few spots because there was matches to our blocked word list. So let's start up a netcat listener, netcat BL 1234. And then let's paste this in here. Execute that, and it hasn't came back, so it's probably good sign. Yep, so we've got our shell. And then what I like to do personally, Python 3, C, load up the Python PTY module so we get a little slightly more standard shell. Oh, or we're supposed to. It's almost like I lost my shell there. Oh. Don't make the mistakes that I make. I forgot a quote there if anybody didn't notice that. That is what I'd forgotten to do. Okay, and so I'm going to use a trick that, again, I got to find out where I originally saw this from. I'm sure it's been passed from person to person to person to person, but I like to give credit where credit is due. I believe it's IPsec, so I'll just go ahead and default credit to him. If you want a fully interactive TTY instead of these kind of half shells where, you know, tab completion like ls, tab completion doesn't work, up down doesn't work. What we can do is Control Z to background it, and then we'll look at what our current terminal is, which is screen O. Let's actually bring this to, well, I can try this in screen in Tmux. I always forget that I prefer to do this outside of Tmux because I get some weird behavior in Tmux sometimes. In fact, yeah, let's foreground this. And then let's, oops, sorry, I'm in the wrong window here, wrong commands around. Let's redo that shell real quick. Okay, so through the magic of editing there, I went ahead and fixed a bunch of the error that I had. So basically, I don't know what it is. One of these days I'll look into it, but in Tmux or screen, this technique doesn't seem to work very well. There's probably a simple solution. So we echo our terminal to see what terminal we currently have, STTYA, and what we want to look for here is rows and columns, so 42 and 161. And then what we'll want to do is do an STTY raw echo. So we're switching that, and then we're going to foreground our connection, which if you notice, I typed the commands and you didn't see it. That's normal. That's just foregrounding our netcat back. Then we'll do reset. It asks for a terminal type. Use the terminal type from above, so xterm 256 color. So we're back in here now. Export shell equals bash. Export term equals xterm 256 color. I don't know how I did that. Got my focus in the wrong spot. And then STTY rows. 42, I actually should have written this down. It doesn't matter too much. Columns, 118. Okay, and so now if we tried ls user or something, we have nice tab completion. And down, got a nice full terminal, or full TTY. And so now we could get the root text same way, so we could do a sudo -l. We can see that we can sudo without script with no arguments. We could do an echo -n root.txt base 64, and we could copy that, and we could do a /home middle monet d paste enter. Permission denied because I don't know how to type. Sorry. There, sudo. Still got permission denied. Oh. Probably echo something a little more useful. When you remember to type the whole command. And there we go. That's it. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave any feedback or comments. If you want to send me a message or give me respect or whatever on Hackthebox.eu, the username's Iceman. That's IC3M4N. And thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Have a great day.